All right, ladies and gentlemen. So here in front of me, I have 6 bows. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to pick the length of your member. Haha. Unlike nature, folks, in archery, you can choose the length of your member. Ha. Sorry. I've heard sex sells. I sure hope so. No, I'm just kidding, guys. I'm not selling anything. All right, so here's the deal. I got 7 bows here. They are all made out of the exact same thickness of material from the same company. They're all identical. They have no differences. You might think, but they do. And those differences are subtle. So let's take a look. You'll see these two are pretty much the same length. They're very close. This one had been broken. Some of these, as I've said, I reclaimed these. I don't buy any of these. You can go to hardware stores and buy them, but I actually prefer to get them at the end of the winter. I live in Canada, and so they sit. And the ones that remain perfectly straight, even after being broken and shattered like this one was at its base, it took some really hard impact damage, some heavy winds, some hard temperatures, some cold weather, and a lot of crap, and it stayed dead straight. So I made use of it. I'll just put a bit there, put a serving kind of thing, and away we go. A nice little etching, make it deep enough that it sits, and you're good to go. Now, the reason I've got a couple of these here is because this one has a riser in the middle. And if even just pressing on it in the fashion that I am right now, and don't worry, we're going to get technical about this in a minute here. I'm going to pull out the weights and we're going to do some measuring. But even if I just press on it like this, and I take the 2 of these, you can see it's pretty easy. I can take one finger and just push this to the bottom. But now I'm struggling and I can't quite get it there. Even though this one is actually got more of its body sitting out over the couch. It should be easier to bow, but it's not. It's actually much, like, look, it's barely any pressure to push it all the way down. Whereas this one, I'm feeling that pressure already. And the harder I try and go, the harder it gets. That's because we've locked this section off. Now, I wanted to show you in one of these. I've done this in other videos, but I just thought I'd do it in this one. This is a wood block that's been insert that runs through, but only at the 2 ends. It's actually hollow in the middle. And then those are solidly epoxied in place. It's not going anywhere. Okay, this is my most recent one. And I'm just going to set you guys up, and we're going to shoot a little bit, and I'm going to show you guys some stuff, and we're going to see and the details, and I'll show you exactly how you pick your length and why, and what effects that's going to have, and the weights of these. And then at the end of this video, you'll be ready to go, and you'll pretty much be able to go look at one of the build videos and then build your own. Technically, you could just go do that, but at least if you check this video out first, you'll get a really good idea of how this affects things, because not only does the length of it affects things, but the length of the riser affects things. The shorter it is, the harder poundage it's going to be, and the longer the riser you put on it, the shorter the limbs will be, and the more powerful the bow will be. So I'm also going to pull out this guy. Now, I haven't showed you guys this one in quite a while, but I still have it. It still shoots very well. This is my longbow. Now, this is made of the same rod, guys. Even though it's covered in tape, it is the exact same rod. I can show you that here. Same thickness, same rod, okay? But it has a soft handle. And I had to cinch it down really hard to even come close to having the power I needed to fire 28-inch arrows. What you want is to associate the arrows you want before you start making your bow. And by associate, I mean you kind of need to get to know the arrows you're going to use a little bit. It helps. In fact, I would rather get the arrows and then build a bow to match the arrows than I would buy a bow and then just start buying random arrows to see what works with it. But for me, it won't be random. I'll look at the bow, check the bow's poundage out and its draw cycle, and know exactly what kind of arrows I need, what length I should have, what weight I should have, all that stuff. But if you don't know any of that stuff, the best thing you can do is go and buy whatever cheap arrows you have available. If they're 24-inch, 22-inch, great. I can make you a bow for that, but you will have a higher poundage bow. This is a tiny little guy. It doesn't look like much, but it's half the diameter, but it's physically almost impossible for me to take one finger of any of my fingers and push this down hard enough to bow it at all. I'm going to use these two and a riser to make a crossbow. But that'll come in an upcoming video. In this one, I'm just going to shoot my latest one. We're going to show you its poundage, and I'm going to show you why I do things the way I do. So this is a perfect example of this bow right here. It was tested with just this rod at its full length, and it was way too weak. So weak, I didn't want to use it. And then I just kept tuning it up and tuning it up and tuning it up by putting slightly bigger risers on it and putting a shorter length on it. And combining the two, I was able to take this very weak rod that was so weak I didn't want to use it and make it strong enough that my roommates and I all agree it's good strength. It's a nice weight. But in the end, it came from a pretty flimsy material. And I find the thinner the diameter here, the more likely your tiller will go out. If you have a big long length like this, the longer the length is, without the rigid middle, the harder it is to draw that to full, and the more tiller twist it'll have, because it's really not that locked in. I find as soon as you go to lock it in, here we have a 10-inch riser, guys. You can see it's a pretty big riser, and it's there for a reason, and it's there to lock off the bow. Now this is a stronger bow, but this one is full length, and the only real difference between them is on one, they are not the same length. You can see that. One's had almost 7 inches removed from it, and the weaker one has the longer riser. Okay, which one's higher powered? It's this one, by a fair bit too, but not as much as you might think. These two come out pretty even. And the reason this one is slightly stronger, and it is a noticeable amount. For me, it's not that much, but for some people, it'd be a big amount. But in the end, it all depends on what you want out of the bow. This one, I've shortened it, but it has a much shorter riser than this one. And they're both made of a very stiff carbon fiber. And it changes the dynamic. The longer that riser is, the stiffer it is. This bow, even though when you look, these two are actually, they're exactly the same length, which is one of the reasons why I pulled these two. So we're actually going to grab them, and I'm going to bring them over here, and we're going to do some weight testing with them in a minute. But for now, I'm going to shoot this and show you. Got to flip my little light around here. Sorry for the mess, but I'm a mess. Better looking, I tell you. All right, so I'm going to set you up real quick. And then what we're going to do in this one, it's not going to take long, but you know how these videos tend to be a little longer than I would like generally, but it's okay. Now in this case, I'm just going to grab me an arrow and show you this bow. Now, just listen to the sound of it, and if you know bows, you'll know right away that this has got some strength to it, but I just want to test it. I haven't really fired this one since I locked it in. But certainly it has no problem with accuracy. It's actually pretty good. I don't have the tiller locked in yet. I don't have my knock installed yet. But I did epoxy it really solid, and it has a long riser. This riser is actually a lighter flex than on some of the other bows, and you can see right here the flex rating. And on this one, the flex rating is 95. On the other two that I was showing you, one is 100. That's the really long one. It's one of the reasons it's not as hard to draw that bow as it is to draw some of the others here. But this is a really nice poundage, guys, for me, for my personal taste, okay? So I'm just going to get right to it. I'm going to show you the poundage here. Oh, also, I thought this would be fun just to show you guys. I actually kept it just so I could show you. Look at this. It's been utterly, fabulously destroyed by a little shooting. I mean, fabulously destroyed. I hit it one day with one of my bows and it literally exploded it. And it was holding air up until that moment, even though it had been beat to hell. I love these as targets. You can shoot these for weeks and weeks and weeks before you have to throw it away. and the lid's still intact, even though it is shattered and missing pieces. The lid has been hit many times, but you can see the impacts, but the lid's intact. Got it like that. Now, of course, if I was using sharpened tips, this wouldn't happen, but I just thought I'd show you that. They make a great target, guys. If you're short on targets, try a water bottle. They're awesome. Fill it with water, and you can shoot arrows through it, and they don't even move. If you're fast enough shooting and you use a 2-liter bottle, you can pump 3 arrows into it before it drains fully. That's a test for you. See if you can do it. It's a lot of fun. All right, so I'm just going to take this. Now on this, we have a 20 kilogram, a 5 kilogram, a 3 kilogram, and 2 kilograms. So if you count with me, 25, 8, 32. So we got 32 kilograms on this bow. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to let that go. Now that's not a super light weight there, guys, but it's not super heavy either. For poundage for a bow, that's not crazy. So, but when you look here, oh, kinky. Hold on, let me rescue you from the floor. And, if you can see that, we got 23 inches here is what we got drawn to. Now that's a decent amount of weight. In fact, even if it was 32 pounds at that strength, that's actually pretty good for a DIY bow that you make at home. I mean, and to have it still be accurate, that's excellent. It would be one thing if I could make a bow that sucked, but this has actually been quite good. So 32, and it only drew to 23 inches, guys. That's nothing. You're not even coming close. You want a 28 draw like this? That's pretty good poundage. You're actually pulling pretty hard to do that draw. It's why I like this bow. It's my favorite in a way, and it's one of my many favorites. I love all these ones with the long rods, but if you don't want at least a 30-pound draw at 23 or 24, these aren't for you. But if you do want at least a 30-pound draw, now this one's higher, but I have shortened it a little. As you can see, there's no point on the end. This one has been boyered. And I've also used a very particular stiffness of material and locked it in solid and epoxied everything in solid. I've got a nice shelf where I want it. Tiller is actually a little off, which is making sense because that shot was a little off to the left. My tiller was a little off to the left. So let's fix that and then try again. But this is just part of the process. I'm in the middle of dialing this one in, so I figured it was a good time to show you guys because, you know, these all shoot pretty well. Ooh, that's my bad. I aimed a little left and it hit a little left, but I'm kind of in a tight space right now. And I kind of went to put my foot where I normally do when there's a new table my roommate brought home the other day, and it's in that spot. I kind of threw my stance off there. Ooh, now I come a little right. Why? Because this time I aimed a little right, figuring it would jump left. But this is what's going to happen with a good bow. If it's really accurate, it'll respond to anything you do. So believe it or not, those 2 shots, they didn't count as misses. Why? Because it hit where I pointed it. And I just aimed just above that lid, figuring it'd drop a little. It didn't. Why? Because it's close. I can lay shots anywhere I want on that target. So I'm going to hit that lid. Ooh. Well, it came out a little low. I figured I was. But this is where you start to dial in your bow. And this is where you start to dial in your tiller, guys. So I just made a minor adjustment to tiller. And while I'm doing this, I figured this is a great time because I didn't hit the lid, right? You're right. Nah, I didn't hit that at all. Nah, not at all. Anyway, keep in mind too that this is laying back on an angle. And when you look at it, it lowers its height to you in relative perspective. But you can see where I hit my target, dead center, which tells me my tiller is right. And it hit at the altitude I want. which means I epoxied this in right. This is a well-built bow, guys. It's got plenty of poundage. It'll punch a flat arrow through an object like it had a sharp tip. This thing is hardly what you'd call sharp. In fact, it's so not sharp, I have no problem doing this because there's no point. And so there's that. So whether you can make a good bow out of this stuff, as far as I'm concerned, started out to be the debate. Whether it was really possible to make a bow as good as I wanted and as accurate as I wanted with these. The answer is yes. I actually can achieve perfect accuracy with this. Not one of those shots was technically a miss. And the reason is it went where I told it to. And you got to be honest with yourself. And this is where that comes in. So I'm starting to aim. And I know when I released, my hand did this. And I was off to the left a little. I know that in my heart. And sure enough, what did I see? It came off to the left. Missed by about as much as I was off too. So then what? Well, then I go to the next step. And I aim a little to the right. Why? Because I felt like, well, I would. I wanted to show you how accurate that really is. I put a shot just on the left side and it was perfect where I put it. I put a shot just on the right side. It's perfect to where I put it. I aim just above it. It's perfect to where I put it. I aim for the target. I smoke it dead center and rape it. Well, that's what I want. That's a good bow. So, what I will tell you is these are not the best arrows in the world. These are not super expensive. I see a lot of people on a lot of bow tuning sites. I've been interacting with them. This video is for you guys partly because I wanted to show you I am a real Fletcher. Yo, those are my own fletchings, guys. My own design. Made out of the fletchings that were already there. If you think that's an accident, and I've done one that way, and I'm flim-flamming you, that's not the case. I've done all 3 of them this way. In fact, I've had 6 of these. I've done all 6 the same way. And the reason I did was because I'm pretty good at what I do. In fact, I was a Fletcher back in the day. And I have made my own fletchings before. In fact, I invented the non-standardized straight fletchings that came out in the 90s. Well, my name's on the patent. And that's why, because I created the idea that if I launch from the right and my fletchings flip the bow over, flip the arrow over in air, and it only does that one roll, instead of continuing to spin, all I do is compensate for the inaccuracy that comes from me firing from the right side. There are other ways to do that. Now, I mentioned I was adjusting my tiller there, and I did. And the reason is, if you can see this, on this bow, I have made it so that the knot sits, from my perspective right now, just a tiny, tiny bit over to the left. And on the other side, it is exactly the same. And when I hold the bow, what you see from my perspective is that the string doesn't line up with the center of the bow. It lines up with the edge of the rest. That gives my string a straighter travel. Guys, that physics applies whether it's a compound bow, a short bow, a recurve bow, a long bow, or any other kind of frickin' bow. Except for a crossbow. With a crossbow, you really don't deal with as much of these things. The tiller is very locked in on a crossbow for a variety of reasons. We're not going to get into that. But I do see a lot of people struggling with their accuracy and struggling to try and achieve perfect accuracy. Guys, I can achieve that with something I built from scratch. And I've been achieving that for decades with things I built from scratch by myself. Don't tell me that I don't know my business. I will laugh in your face while I shoot rings through you, because I do not miss, my friend. But there's a reason that I don't. I didn't win championship with undefeated type status because I sucked. I didn't hit the bullseye every time because I miss. I hit the bullseye every time because I know what I'm doing. When I want to hit the target, I will not miss because my bow is built right. It is dialed in right. It is set up right, and I shoot correctly. You add all those things together. I also know how to gauge the wind. I don't miss. I served. I never missed. That's what I was known for. That's why they liked me. But in the end, not everybody has that natural skill. But I grew up learning how to shoot. And when I first took a rifle, I was horrible at it until I taught myself how to shoot. And what I did was teach myself a breathing technique. So it's hard for me to show you that while I shoot, so I'm just going to show it to you like this. So let's say that you're going to hold this steady, and you're going to move, and you're going to know that you have some movement and you're going to try and stop it. Yo, did you know the more you try and stop it, the more you shake? Look at that. I just squeezed my hand to try and stop the little bit of movement that I had going on. See that? You induce shake. As soon as you squeeze, you start to induce shake. Yo, I'm a strong guy. I'm not pulling the bow and struggling. No, I'm squeezing and inducing shake. See the shake on the string? Now watch when I relax. Yo, I'm not doing that on purpose. I'm trying not to. Don't squeeze the bow hard. Technique counts for everything. Now look at my fingertips. They're twitching, but you see the bow? Much more steady. There's a lot of things that come into play with perfect accuracy, and it starts with the right bow and having the right setup. All of that matters, but this setup, the way I have this bow dialed in, might not suit everybody. In fact, it won't, because my roommate is going to start to shoot, and I would now have to set up the bow for him to shoot this bow accurately. I can center the tiller and get it centered, but it's not going to shoot optimally there. It didn't. That's why I moved it, even though it was quite good, and most people wouldn't know the difference. They'd shoot it and think that the inaccuracy that they're seeing is them. But I will tell you this, if you're less than 30 feet away, or 30 feet on a bow that's like this, where it's 70 pounds, and you can't hit the target dead center where you aimed it, like it should hit, if you aim here, it should hit here. I should be able to nail a penny from that range, hit it dead center if I choose to. I should be able to make that shot. If you can't, there's something wrong, either with the arrows or the bow or you. And that is the trick. When you're new to archery, it's really, really hard for you to tell which one of those is at play. For me, it's really easy. I know I built the bow right. I know my shooting is perfect. So if I don't get the accuracy I want, I don't look to me. Well, I came to realize that's kind of a huge advantage for me because I have that level of confidence. And I acknowledge that my form is perfect. But I also lived in an arrow camp and trained that for months under the tutelage of professionals. To get that, I had a very lucky experience, and I learned absolutely everything that I could learn at that camp. The way the camp was set up is once you paid your fee, you could tick any of the boxes for any of the course they offered, and it wouldn't cost you any extra. And since my mom had paid for the course and I wanted to learn everything, I learned everything from flint napping to fletching to shaft making for my arrows to arrowhead making, which is the napping, to boyering. And because I do have a really solid foundation for my knowledge. And I also have done a lot of competition shooting and military competitions and such like. I always won. I was our #1 shooter for my entire career. And there's plenty of documentation to prove it. So, you know, my reputation as a shooter isn't in question. In fact, if you've not heard of me, that's cool. I'm not famous. I don't do the tournament circuit. I never did. But I'll tell you, I'll shoot circles out with those guys most of the time. But I bullseye birds by hitting them in the eye in flight. What do you do for practice? I'm just saying, I mean, when I was a kid, that's how I grew up. Bullseyeing birds, trying to hit them in the eye and doing it successfully. For me, hitting a stable target indoors is like a joke. It's boring. But it's made more exciting for me by the fact that I make my bow, that I customized an arrow so I could shoot indoors. And I like it. I have a lot of fun doing it. So for me, and I get this whole thing where I get to work out with it. So for me, all those things are huge pluses. Now we go from something like that to something like this, where it's pretty much the exact same sort of a thing, only way stronger. And when you get into a bow like this, I gotta tell you, I mean, you get to a point where you go too far. And this is why I kind of try and warn you guys, because when you get into some of these, you're taking these stiffer rods and you're shortening them and putting a riser on it, you're not talking a weak bow here. When you see me do this stuff, know what you're getting into before you do this. I will say to you, if you wanted, say, a 18 to 25 pound bow, you could take one of those little short landscaping rods I showed you at the beginning that I made my short bow out of and go for it. And you will have a ton of fun with those. They're awesome. Now watch this. I'm going to show you me bowing this, guys. Look at how short the string is here. Okay? This is no joke. This bow is just shy of ripping itself apart. But that's why I'm doing it. So hold on. I'll show you. Now, we got a higher brace height, but this bow was set up for this. This bow is no joke. This bow likes high poundage, okay? But when I show you the weight of it, again, this is no joke. And I mean, you guys will hear me tell you that these are my favorite bows, but I like them because they're accurate. And at the same time, I can do a good workout with them. And I don't have to shoot 500 shots to get a good workout like I would have to with a 30-pound bow. In fact, with a 30-pound bow, I'm not getting that workout no matter what. I can shoot that all day and never get the same workout I get from shooting this 20 times. But take a look at what that weight does to this. It's not much, and that's enough weight. I mean, my hand's shaking holding it. It's a good deal more than 30 pounds. I don't start to get that kind of an effect at that weight, but it's not much more, believe it or not. It might seem like it, it's really not that much more. They are dive weights, which are rated usually in kilograms, unless they're made in the US. I live in Canada, so my dive weights, there you go. So, I'm going to take the measuring tape, which I stuck down over here, and I left it locked at this, but the last one came up to 23, right at 23 inches. So, you can tell how strong a bow you made is by this test. Take 30 pounds or 32 pounds or 40 pounds or whatever you got. A couple of 2 liters filled with water. And look at this one. This one's not even 21 inches, guys. So, I mean, when you're talking a bow that's this strong at that low draw length, you might wonder why I would do that. But the arrows that I plan to buy for this bow are 22 inches. So what I wanted was for it to achieve the poundage I wanted, which was right around 60 pounds, 58 pounds, at 22 inches, which is right about where it came out. So I did a good job. It's perfect. As a boyer, I achieved the specific, and I had very specific goals for each of my bows. And every single one of them has achieved those goals. But had I not had those goals in mind, I more than likely would have been disappointed with my first bow. And I try to save you guys that trouble by helping you to kind of navigate what you might want and not want. This is brutally strong. You don't want this, trust me. Unless you're doing what I'm doing, where you want a 60 to 80 pound draw or more, and you find that anything less than that just feels really weak, and you're really not enjoying the experience. You don't really want that. Okay, well, I get that. Believe me, I get that. That's kind of where it's at for me. Now this might look to be the exact same kind of deal. It's got a riser. It's even got a really long riser. Okay? It's a bow. It's the same material. It even got shortened by an inch or two. It doesn't have the point anymore, you might think, but you'd be right. This one got broken off, but I measured it. It only lost an inch, guys. So it's only shortened by a single inch. Also, look at the difference in the length of the string. Remember, the other one came up to here. That doesn't seem like much, that 3 inches. But as you're about to see, that is huge. So that's the other part of the equation, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to cover this in this video. This one is covering the length of everything and how that matters. From the length of the riser to the length of the string, all of that has a huge impact on the overall poundage of your bow and its draw length. So, voila, estilo. It's actually a great little bow. I love this one. It shoots really well. But here you will see a very different thing, because the other 2 bows were built for me to work out with. This one actually wasn't. I actually built this one to see if my roommates would like it, to see if it was the right poundage for them, and because I wanted a nice bow I could shoot with my 28-inch arrows that are limited at 40 pounds. So they can't have any kind of a crazy draw length. It's like they're forbidden. I tried that already by firing them on a 48-pound bow at 28 inches, and it shattered 3 shafts. I haven't shattered one since, because I stopped shooting them through 50-pound bows when they're only rated for 40 pounds. Now look at this. Now this is where you see a difference. So this one is at 26.5 inches, guys, is where that came out to. So at 26.5, that's pretty much perfect for a 28-inch arrow if I do a short draw, which inside I do. And that was partly what I made this bow for. my roommates wanted a bow right around that poundage, and I thought, well, that's kind of ideal for me. I'll check it out. Now, when you set one up, you don't want to see this, but you can see that's a much weaker bow. It's the same 32 kilos, but it takes a lot farther to get there. For me to draw this bow here, it feels like it's nothing. It feels like there's nothing there. But if I put 10 pounds on, you'd see it only goes to here. And by the time you get to here, you're already at a 30-pound draw. And by the time you get to here, you're at a 50-pound draw, and I draw to here. Okay? So I draw to my cheek to anchor. Okay? So my thumb actually impacts right here on my cheek. If it didn't come right here, and it should be exactly this distance, 2 inches from the very bottom of your chin up, right locked in. And in fact, you'll feel the point in your jaw, in my jaw, where my knuckle has been there so many times. There's actually an indent in my jaw from it. That's how locked in my shit is, and an x-ray proves it. Kind of messed up that it could be that way, but I also have injuries in the bone from so much shooting like this, where I grab here and shoot here with heavy weights and shoot. And I've done that so many times that there's actual physical damage from it, just like any martial art. You got a sword in your hand all the times, it starts to affect your musculature and all these other things. And that's part of it. You practice enough, you get built up for it. And I'm very built up for archery. But at the same time, I'm just recently getting back into it. So I'm kind of like starting over again. And I couldn't afford a bow. And I mean, you know, all of these are totally different. They may look the same. They're all made of the same rod. They're all basically the same damn thing, aren't they? But in the end, they're not. They're totally different. This is an unfussed with rod, but I wanted to show you one more thing on this one. Kind of like an update. You don't see this very often with these. These are really good quality, but this is something you want to watch out for, this delamination. You see any of that, you get rid of that piece right away and you replace it. Otherwise, it's going to shatter. That one's going to get shortened and turned into a short bow. So I'm going to end this one. I just wanted to show you guys a little bit of the details because what I'm going to recommend is this. If you are not sure of the length you want, you cannot lengthen the riser, but you can shorten it. So what I recommend is you put just the bare rod, make your serving, put your string on, give it a 7-inch brace height. Try it. See how you feel. See if you like it. Put your bare hand in where you think it should shoot and start indexing where at that point in the bow it should shoot from. And you'll see this should be perfectly in the middle of the bow. If it is, you'll be good. So your thumb, when you draw, when I let that bow rest against me, the bow should draw pretty evenly. Okay? When you look at both parts of this, they're drawing pretty evenly, the top and the bottom. That's something you want to look for. There's all these little things. If you don't have that, you move your hand accordingly. But once you get your rod on it, if it's not satisfactory, don't go right to cutting the length off, because once you've cut it short, you can't re-lengthen it. So instead of doing that, I actually recommend you leave it long, put a string on it just long enough to give you a 7-inch brace height, and you can experiment with that. And all I recommend you do for that is you tie your knot off. Some people will be a little messier. Some people will be a little neater. Some people do more knots than others. So the amount of string that will be taken up in that is different for each person. In a lot of cases, especially if you're new to it, you're not really going to have perfect technique. Don't worry about that part yet. Just dial it in. The best thing to do is to get yourself set up so that your tiller is correct for your shooting style. If you shoot off the left side, put your knot a little over to the left side so that when you view the bow from your angle, your arrow and your string are aligned with the rest. You want your string as close to that rest as you can get it. And the more angle you have like this, the more it wants to shoot off to the right and high. The more you have it perfect, the better it'll be and the straighter it'll be. Everything matters, but every single one of these bows I've been able to put up this kind of accuracy with, and they're simple. They don't have to be crazy high poundage, but what they do have to be is balanced. So this has a good handle that takes out vibration, which helps make it more accurate. It's also very stiff and locks it off and keeps the limbs. You notice on that one, it's got a very short bottom limb and a very tall upper limb. But that's where it needed to be for it to be at its best accuracy. And over time, I've come to find it really likes being there on that rod with that riser. The reason is the specific amount of flex that rod and riser have in conjunction with each other. It just works out that way. So you never just want to go, oh, well, it should be here mathematically in the dead center, put it there. Don't do that. Experiment, fine tune it, and get it right. All of these bows are similar. I mean, they shoot similar, but feel totally different. Some feel much more locked in and much more solid, much more substantial, even though they all feel pretty good. And that's generally the ones with the longer, heavier riser. They have more weight. There's more wood blocks in them. There have to be to cover the length of it. So in all, they end up just feeling better for me. And they also make it stiffer, which I like. But this is why I tell you don't shorten it first and don't start with a short riser. Start with a long riser and a long rod. Put the two together. Put your wood blocks in. Epoxy, no epoxy. Just wait, test it in, dial it in, leave it bowed for a couple of days and keep shooting it and see how it moves. And you'll see over time you have to move that handle as it breaks in. So once you fine tuned it and it's locked in and you see over time the brace height's not lowering, the string's broken in, everything's good, now you go to epoxying things. I don't epoxy anything until the string is broken and until all that other stuff is done, because they can throw off the apparent correctness of the shooting. So if the rod breaks in so that one end bows a little more than the other, which is what happened with this one, with this particular one length is longer than the other when you look at it very obviously. But the reason it had to be like that is to get it accurately. Whereas when you look at this one, it came out bang in the middle. Okay, well, the reason that it did was because this is a very short, very, very stiff riser, and it's braced fairly soft with rubber rather than wood, but a very dense, hard rubber. And so it has a lot of vibration absorption. I actually really love that one. To shoot it, it's one of my favorites. But to get the strength I wanted, I had to vastly shorten it. Compare this to the length of a full-size rod, and you see what I'm talking about. I didn't just shorten it a little. I shortened it by like 7 inches. And because it's one of the ones that I did that to, it is one of my favorites. These 4 are my favorite bows, and I don't know if you notice anything similar about each and every one of them. They're all pretty much made of the same method. No, there's one hidden in here. It's actually smaller diameter by a little, just a little. And it's a slightly different color because it's a slightly different material from a slightly different manufacturer, even though they're both made for the same job. And they both rate at the same thickness. This one's actually a couple thousandths of an inch smaller. This one's actually like 3/8 and this one's 4/8. But it's that kind of a difference. It's not a lot, but there is a noticeable difference between these two. But in the end, it's nowhere near the strength. This one is designed and built to shoot my 28-inch arrows and to come out right around 38 pounds at 28, which is perfect. It's actually 40 at 28, but I don't pull the 28. I pull the 27 or 26 and a half most of the time on a short shot inside especially, which results in the perfect shot with nice poundage, which doesn't ruin my arrows, which is why I still have the same 3 I bought last month, and I didn't have to buy more this month. So one of the reasons I wanted to cover this is the reliability. I have spent more money. Had I not changed my setup for my bows, I would still be spending $30-$40 every month to buy more arrows. I would rather buy arrows and only have to replace them when they really wear out. I shouldn't be shattering them prematurely with how strong a bow it is. This is one of the reasons I need to do a long video series with this, because, okay, I can tell you to build this bow. It's a lovely bow. I liked it a lot. If you're like me, you'll love it. But if you're not capable of benching 200 pounds, you're going to hate me for it because it's brutal. Whereas this one you'd love me for because it's easy to make. It's got adjustable elevation. You can just dial it in. It makes it so nice. This one you really can just lock it off in the middle and then just start dialing in your elevation. You got plenty of room to work with. But you don't. I still did the same thing. I broke it in. I tested it. I actually held it in place with elastics, just like I showed in that build series. Tested it, and that's what I recommend. You put an elastic on each end and just roll it down. to lock it into the middle, put your string on, start to shoot, and then you can slide it up and down and have it hold in place and long enough for you to test fire it and see if it's accurate, and then just keep fine tuning it until you get it perfect. I've done plenty of videos to show you how to do that. I've showed you the process lots of times, so you guys can go back and look at the shooting videos and you'll see that. And really, in the end, what I recommend is you just watch every video in this series, because in each one, I discuss the finer points of attaining perfect accuracy. Well, it's not an easy thing. It was a 40-year career for me. So I'm guessing for you, it might take a minute to learn, but that's okay. I'm prepared to teach you, but it's going to take us hours. You'll have to sit with me for many, many hours, guys, before you have the knowledge needed to build your own bow to your own spec. That's like you have to build a custom bow, only you don't know what you want. Okay, well, that's why I recommend this the way I do, because if you start with a long riser that's real stiff and a long rod, you can just shorten the two of them. No, what you do is if you find it too soft, you start shortening the rod. Leave the riser alone. You're going to want that long riser. It's one of the reasons I recommend it. If you find it too strong, you go the other end and you start shortening your riser, because you will never want a really long riser. If you're firing at that low a poundage, you're going to want a short riser on your bows. So once you have that knowledge, you'll be fine. So what I would do is start nicking down my bow because I want it stronger. Nick it down, nick it down, nick it down. Now, if I get to the length I like the bow at, where I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to make this any shorter. I like the size of it. It feels good to me. It shoots well, but I still find it too weak. Then I'm going to pull that riser off. This is one of the reasons I tell you not to epoxy it right away. Then I pull that riser off, put a longer one on, and that's stiffer, and go from there. And it's one of the reasons why I keep a ton of them. Why? And I'm always cutting new ones. Why? Because I need to know. And I've experimented with at least 24 of them personally to see what different sticks are like and different strengths and all that stuff. I've done tons of experimenting at this point. My roommate Jeff has helped a lot with that. He works at a hockey arena and he's always bringing me home sticks. So like even now, if I just go and show you, we got a bunch of them in the closet that I could use if I choose, that are just sitting there. Nobody's using them because he brings them home. And so I'll take something like this and start taking the nice bits out of it that make us a really sexy looking hockey stick. No, but I might take that orange 9X. Oh, in fact, I'm going to see that. There's another one right there. And the way they line up, I can take both of those too and turn them into a nice matched set of risers that cover this distance from here to here. And when you put your hand on it, you see that that is a beautiful size for a riser, my friends. And that's the kind of thing I do. So I'll take that, and that'll go up onto the cutting section and make two really nice risers. Now, we do have a lot of other sticks here, and I don't really need 2 orange risers. In fact, nobody is asking at home for 2 orange and black risers, but I'm pretty sure that I know a whole bunch of people who are going to love those. And same with this, where it says Catalyst here. That's actually a nice length, and it's cut just at the right length for a riser. In fact, this is one I grabbed. I was originally going to do a riser out of it and ended up not. And that was partly why. And I mean, we do have a lot of choices here, guys. There's all kinds, but what you look for is the flex rating. You see this? 75 flex. This is epic if you want to make a really strong bow. So let's take a look at the one that I was just looking at. And you look along the side of it, and you will always see the flex number printed. In fact, in this case, I'm not seeing it. And it's not that it's not there, it's that it's under the handle. And that's something else, too. You end up with a lot of really nice handles on these, with some of these when you peel off this section, because they were taped, so they're clean. And the rest of it can be pretty beat up. But generally, you look and you will start to see the rating of it. And that's what you want to be looking for, is the strength rating. And they do have one. Every single stick has a flex rating. So what you got to do is search the stick to find the ratings. Now, most sticks, it's pretty straightforward and pretty obvious, where they're going to say something like this. And this is telling you it's an 85 grip with the length of it's 71 flex is my guess on that one. But it can be complicated to read these, so I thought I'd show you that in this video too. I apologize again for the long video, but I wanted to show you a bunch of these in their natural state sort of thing so you can see what I'm talking about. Now you can see these 70 flex, these are brutal. You use these with really strong bows. And I have a lot of them that were pretty heavy duty like that, and they have made it onto my stronger bows. But you take one like this actually had a much higher flex rating and is much softer. I had originally put this on a much stronger bow and it promptly shattered it. So it's on a full length rod. As you can see, it still has its point, and at the other end it still has all its bits, and it's unmolested on its ends. It is uncut. So at full length with a 10-inch riser, or sorry, a 9-inch riser, it's actually pretty good. It makes decent poundage. It's not high poundage, but it's comfortable. And it's good for shooting my 28-inch arrows. And that's really the key, guys, is to design a bow. And really, you might not think so, but in essence, you're designing your bow. It is literally what you're there to do. When you're talking about a bow, you're going to design your bow. And if you don't know what you're doing, you might look at a DIY bow and be like, man, you're an idiot. Why would you even recommend that I do this? But the reason I do is because that little bit of experimentation that you will do while you're dialing it in. I mean, look, I didn't exactly make one or two, guys. I say I've been experimenting for months. Yo, I'm surrounded by the evidence of that experimentation. So I'm not kidding you when I talk about this. I tell you that perfect accuracy is possible. I'm not a liar. I've achieved it, and I do it all the time. And the people who tell me that I'm an idiot, I just kind of laugh at them while I outshoot them. And they think I'm lying to them because I don't want to give away the secrets. But that's not the truth. The truth is I set this up and did all this so that I could. I've gone to a lot of trouble so I can give you the secrets. So please take the time to like, share, and subscribe, and you will see why I do it. Because I don't do it for me. It's not out of ego. It's because these are skills that when I was young, not everybody knew, and was kind of like the old school knowledge that was needing to be passed down. And that's what got the Aero Camp started, was trying to teach that knowledge to young people. And so I've learned a lot since then, and I've decided to do this series. And one of the reasons I have is because you can get into archery and achieve great accuracy, go hunting, do all that stuff, go get your hunting license. Doesn't mean you have to go buy a bow. I would if I had the money, but that doesn't mean I don't have the ability to make a bow that works well and shoot well. In fact, for years, I went without a bow and wasn't in archery, but I was shooting all the time. I was serving. I didn't want to, at the end of the day, shoot archery. I wanted to be away from that kind of stuff. I wanted to break from it. Well, now I'm retired and I'm bored, and I wanted to go back to shooting, because before I started serving, shooting used to be a real kind of Zen thing for me. It was like martial arts. It was a real joy thing. And only more relaxed and more calming, and it more appeals to my older nature now. And it was a good workout, all those things. And I started seeing videos from the Backyard Boy and a whole bunch of other folks doing videos out of this kind of stuff. Only they're in the States, most of them, and they have access to really crappy fiberglass, and we have much better quality stuff here because we have harsher winters. They make these landscaping stakes much, much tougher here, from what I was told, and they actually come out double the poundage, so it turns out to be a verified fact. I also did a little checking, and it turns out that I'm one of the people who developed the casing material that this is. I developed a lot of material science in the late 80s and early and mid 80s, and plastic was a big part of that. We were working with a lot of polymers. I created 3D printing. The original prototype has my name on it. That's why. So there's a lot of stuff like that we have here. Just like you guys have stuff in the States that got invented there that you don't really see in other countries. It's not that we wouldn't export it. It's just that nobody's ever asked for it. I don't think anybody even knows we make this stuff, and I don't think anybody cares. But apparently there are some Americans right now who are going, those bastard Canucks, we should invade. But please don't. We like you. Just order it. We will send it to you. No big deal. We won't even charge much extra, I promise. Well, maybe they might. It's import. It's not our fault. Anyway, I'm pretty sure if you guys wanted to, you could order a batch of these from Canada and they'd ship it to you if you paid the shipping. I can't verify that. I haven't been in the States and tried to order it. If one of you guys wants to let me know if you can find out, if you can order, that would be cool. Only I can't even have you guys see and talk to me in the comments, which is horrible but necessary, and started when I very first started my YouTube channel. And I really don't go through the comments. I don't spend my time looking through them. And that's a good thing because I can't see them. And there's just so much spewing of hate and stuff like that from people. I've seen so much from making comments on Facebook and other things. When it came to this, I was just like, no, I don't want to see comments. And I kind of regret it now. I wish I didn't. But it leads to videos like this where I have to be long-winded and explain a whole bunch of stuff because you can't really ask a question. So I try to, in the course of the video series, cover absolutely every possible detail. But then I realized what that really makes this is the most comprehensive series on building your own bow that you are going to find on YouTube. And the reason it is really simple. Nobody else is explaining all the details. None of these backyard bowyers will show you what I just showed you, but that's because they tell you they're not a professional bowyer. I am not a professional bowyer by definition because I do not sell my work. However, I am a certified and recognized bowyer and have over 30 years of my work out there in the world still shooting. So there's that. On top of that, I don't miss. So there's that. And between the two, I really do know what I'm talking about. And it's why I wanted to kind of tackle this, because when I started seeing all these videos, I started thinking to myself, man, they're not really doing it right. There's so many other things they're not showing you about setting up the tiller and about this and about that and about this and about that. I mean, if you're talking a DIY bow that's so easy to build, any beginner could build it, why aren't you giving beginner instruction? Why aren't you teaching these people how to shoot from scratch? So that was something I wanted to try and do in this series. But I also wanted to talk about how you could bowyer this, how to make it stronger, how to make it softer, what the poundage will be like once you do that, and give you enough examples that you could sort through for yourself what you want before you get started. Because these two bows, guys, they don't look much different, but they sure as hell feel different when you shoot them. Very different. And they might not look it. One is noticeably longer than the other. And when you really look, guys, they are significantly different. And you might not think so. I mean, why is the one with the longer riser the weaker one? Well, I don't know. Why is it? Okay, it has a much longer riser, guys. A much longer riser. But it's equally shorter to that difference and a little more. Also, this has more flex. Now, I don't actually see it flexing, but when I look across the surface of it, I can see a tiny little bow to it, which is one of the reasons why it is what it is. Whereas this one, when you do the same thing with this one, guys, there's none of that. This is a much stiffer material and is rock solid, but that's why it has a less than 100 flex, which brings me to my next point. The other one has 115 flex or something like that. And that's just way too high for the poundage of bow that I originally put on it. So I actually had to put it on a weaker rod. Now this brings me to my final point. Not all of these rods are created equal. This rod was a weaker rod to start with at equal length with no riser. Just put the same exact leg string on it. Literally make one, take that string off, put the string on the next one and test them both. That's what I recommend. You buy a batch, they come in 4, buy your batch of 4 and then set each one up and put a string on it and see how much it bends and check the poundage. And when you do, you'll see why I tell you to right away, because there could be a drastic difference in poundage. You might find one is at 23 pounds at 23 inches and the other one's at 30 pounds at 22 inches. They can be vastly different. And the reason is they're not made to production quality standards for making a bow. It's not something the original manufacturer ever considered you would do with it. And so the quality standard is different. So they don't all have to be exactly the same, but they all have to be within the spec. But the spec is a wider range than you would want if you were just making bows. But for those of us who are bowyers or who want to be or who want to get into archery, that's perfect because it gives you a spread pack. It gives you 4 totally different bows out of that one cheap pack of rods. And the reason you want that is for the same reason I did. I made 4 separate bows out of them. different length risers. The strongest ones went with the stiffest rods, and the stiffest pieces have to go together. The softer pieces went together, and it worked very well. The bows that are softer can have a handle with a little more flex, and it won't matter. But you put that same handle on a bow with too much strength, and all of a sudden it starts to flex that casing, and you start to look at the edges and you see it's wanting to rip itself apart. That's bad. You need to use a stiffer one, stiffer epoxy, all that kind of stuff. So to start with, the softest one is actually what I recommend of the four. If you're new to archery, it'll be the best way. Don't shorten it, and put yourself on a 6-inch riser. That'll give you the maximum draw length out of it. Basically, it'll give you the least amount of power. Give it a 6.5-inch brace height instead of 7. That'll make it a little gentler too. These do very well with a fairly low brace height. You can put a 6-inch or a 5-inch brace height on if you want, and use a really short string to get less poundage if you really want to. And it all works out in the end. It's one of the reasons I really recommend it, because